Poets and Poets. Let me begin with that. It's because I've always wondered, why is it that anywhere you go, somebody says this is so New York, or this is so New Orleans, or this is so, no one ever says this is so DC. So when I started thinking about what makes DC what it is, I started looking at all those layers, and particularly culture and art and music is the key to what makes DC DC. So I started analyzing what DC looks like. So DC is a political city. It's a literary city. People read in DC. It's Chocolate City. It's been Chocolate City for many years. It's got a history and a culture. It's the birthplace of the Harlem Renaissance. It's got a lot of elements to it that a lot of people don't oftentimes associate DC with. We associate DC with the federal government. We associate DC with furloughs. We associate DC with corruption. But there's so much more to DC than just what meets the eye. So I wanted to create a place that really feels and looks like that. And I drove around looking at places. I looked at Black Broadway, that U Street corridor. I looked at that U Street corridor and saw all the changes that were taking place, buildings that were going up, named after great iconic figures of the Harlem Renaissance, like Duke Ellington, or like Langston Hughes. And I looked at the Duke Ellington building, which was built on Black Broadway, U Street, that was called Black Broadway. And I saw that I needed to be able to really kind of set my flag there and say, this is where we're going to hold on to the culture and the history and the legacy of the city. And lo and behold, there was a tanning salon that was built on the base of the building called the Ellington on a street called Black Broadway. And I recognized that this is what gentrification looks like. That a lot of times it's an erasure of the history. And those buildings with those names become just names that no one really knows or cares about. So when I turned the corner and saw the Langston Lofts, I knew that Langston Hughes was calling out. And that's when I opened Busboys and Poets, a place named after Langston Hughes and his legacy and his story. And I wanted to make sure that that place held on to that history and that culture. And as the city's been changing, as the city's been gentrifying so quickly, you'll know that the place that I've opened has been a place that is inclusive, that does bring art, that does bring music, that does bring culture to a city that is having its art and music and culture being taken away by every single minute. So I think that there's a lot of power in what we're talking about here. A lot of power in the music, a lot of power in the culture, a lot of power in the art. And I believe that by creating spaces like this and by honoring and respecting and holding on to that art and culture, we can really preserve the whole value of what DC is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowser.
Thank you, Colby, and I want to thank everybody, all the sponsors of this forum for inviting me out. My name is Muriel Bowser, and I'm running for mayor because I truly believe that this is one of the most pivotal elections in the district's history. We're really at a turning point in our city. While we're growing and we love progress, we also feel the pressures of that progress in all 8 wards of the District of Columbia. We feel it in housing, we feel it in employment, and yes, we feel it in those things that make up the fabric of the District of Columbia. So Andy is kind of situated in the epicenter of that change in DC at 14th and U Streets. When we go there, we see that change. When my parents go there, they don't recognize it at all. My parents were married at St. Augustine's Church, and now when they go there, actually they won't go there because they can't find any place to park. And so this is a different city in a lot of ways from the one I grew up in. Now the one I grew up in, and I see some people were around the room who look to be about in my age group, it was a dangerous city. It was the murder capital of the world. Crack had taken us over. Our schools were spiraling out of control and we were broke. This was a city that we all wanted to kind of grow and get away from. So we should be proud of our progress, and we should step into that progress and make sure that we have a place and a voice in that progress. Now the go-go community is the DC culture that I think about. This is the culture of my childhood and the art form that I grew up with. And when I see it under attack, and I think it is, we have a kind of 2 minds in this city about clubs, don't we? So if it's a problem at a go-go, it's different than a problem at a bar around a college, right? And so what we have to make sure is that the rules are clear and they apply evenly to everybody. Now people, they get on me sometimes because, I represent a ward, and people in neighborhoods, they like to be able to go to sleep at night, right? That's fair. So we want to make sure our alcohol policies respect the neighborhoods and that we support business and commerce. And that's what art is. Art is business as well as the self-expression of a people. So we want to make sure our entire business environment, including our nightlife environment, supports that. Now, this administration, in my view, has declared war in many ways on our native art culture. I'll give you one example. Ever been to the Caribbean Carnival on Georgia Avenue?
Yeah.
Well, they said, that don't matter that much, Bowser, because they didn't pay for their trash pickup. Or we've overcharged them for police and they couldn't pay. So in the sense Vince Gray has been in office, we haven't been able to have Caribbean Carnival. That's not right. Now, Mount Pleasant Day, remember that? Yeah. Celebration of culture in Mount Pleasant. You know where it is now? It's on Pennsylvania Avenue downtown. Well, that's not right. So we want to make sure that our city is set up to support the arts and culture the culture of our neighborhoods. And that's what we're going to be doing today.